are so many great players that have never won it, of course. The likes of Arjen Robben, Wesley Sneijder, Robin van Persie. Those are all Dutch players. Believe me, there are so many great players. The likes of Ronaldo and Messi, for example. Today, we're gonna do something different. We're not gonna focus on the players, but we're going to focus on the nations instead. Because in this video, I'm going to be ranking the best countries to never win the World Cup ever in their existence. That was very dramatic, but anyways, you get the idea. And of course, there's somewhat of a system that determines which country is in number 1, which country is in number 10. Of course, a country that has been runners-up multiple times gets to be higher in the list rather than a country that finished in 3rd place, for example. For example, in number 1, we have a nation that has been runners-up 3 times and also finished in 3rd 1 time. Before checking out the video, let me know in the comments down below if you already know the answer to which country that is. Let's be honest, this should be a fairly easy one. So without further ado, let's get right into the video and let's start off with number 10. Well, I say let's start off at number 10, but actually we have 3 number 10s because Chile, Turkey and the USA have all finished in 3rd place once. And all of these achievements came quite a long while back, except for Turkey, because in 2002, during the World Cup in Japan, they actually managed to get 3rd spot, winning against South Korea. Am I the only one who thinks this is weird? Turkey versus South Korea for 3rd spot. Really? So you have a World Cup going on, and those are the nations that are playing game for 3rd and 4th spots. This just does not make any sense. At least the final was somewhat normal. Germany versus Brazil, which of course Brazil won. So you already know that these guys will not appear in this video. Well, that was pretty obvious. They won it many times and they might do it this year again, but I don't really see that happening though. I'm not gonna lie, this tournament was wild. South Korea was absolutely on steroids. They won against the likes of Italy, Spain, eventually got knocked out by Germany, but that is pretty ridiculous. Alright, enough about the 2002 World Cup, but that was the tournament that Turkey managed to get 3rd place, so well done to them. Chile managed that same feat in 1962. They won against Yugoslavia 1-0. The fact that Yugoslavia still existed already tells you how long ago that actually was. But that brings us to the last country in number 10, because the United States also finished in 3rd place once. And I have to be honest, I had no idea that they actually managed to get that far in the tournament. But now that I see this actually makes sense, because this happened all the way in 1930, the first World Cup that ever got played. And I'm sorry, I can't really give you a clear picture on how football was in America in 1930. But the fact that they made it to 3rd spot shows that at least they had some good football players back then. So definitely not a bad achievement, but still, more than 90 years later, this is still their best achievement ever at a World Cup. They managed to go to the quarterfinals in the 2002 World Cup as well, but all their other tournaments weren't that successful. Because other than those exceptions, they only made it past the last 16 twice. So in number 10, we had 3 nations that achieved the same thing. So that's why we're moving all the way up to number 7. 3 nations that achieved the same thing. Big nations actually, if you think about it. So this will be fun, and let's start off with the first one, Belgium. They managed to finish in 3rd spot once, but they also finished in 4th place once. And if you ask me, this makes a lot of sense, because for a lot of years, Belgium weren't really that great. Of course, now they have the golden generation. I say they have the golden generation. Sure, some players are still there, but it's pretty obvious that their peak is behind them, because yeah, I don't know, I don't think that they will win a big tournament. Their chance literally passed. I think that 2018 actually was their last opportunity to win the biggest tournament in international football. You could say that Euro 2020 was still an opportunity, but nah, I think their peak was already behind them back then. So let's talk about the 2018 World Cup, because they were actually pretty close. During the tournament, things looked great for Belgium. They had a little bit of a scare in the round of 16. Strangely enough, that was against Japan, but they still managed to win that game. After that, they knocked out Brazil, but they stranded in semifinals against eventual winners France. And in 3rd place playoff, they won 2-0 against England. The World Cup before, they made it to the quarterfinals, so that already showed that they were building a good team. Well, I'm saying building, but that actually doesn't make any sense. It's basically just luck. And they were pretty lucky that the likes of Eden Hazard, De Bruyne, Lukaku were all part of the same generation of Belgian football. But then again, they didn't win anything, so yeah, pretty unlucky for them. During the Mexican World Cup in 1986, they also had a pretty good run. Again, making it to the semifinals, but then subsequently losing that game against France. That meant that they finished in 4th that tournament. Another big nation that managed to achieve the same thing, so 1 3rd place and 1 4th place finish, is Portugal. Never ever have they won a World Cup. Do they have a chance this year? No, absolutely not. No way. There's no chance that they will win it. In recent years, at least they had Cristiano Ronaldo banging some goals in. And unfortunately, he's not in great form right now. He's barely playing for Manchester United. But to be fair, I mean, they can make a good run, but win the tournament? Nah, don't make me laugh. That's not gonna happen. So still, till this day, their best achievement was in the 1966 World Cup. I'm pretty sure that a lot of you guys watching from England definitely have good memories of that tournament. Not that you guys were alive back then, but of course, England won that World Cup. So you guys must have been very happy with that tournament. And I guess the Portuguese as well, because they won the bronze medal back then. 40 years later, they were in the same position as they were playing in the 3rd place playoff. But unfortunately for them, then in 2006, the result wasn't that great, losing the final and finishing 4th in that tournament. And strangely enough, enough, I didn't really expect these guys here because Austria also managed to finish in 3rd and 4th once in their history. But for them, in comparison to Portugal, it was the other way around. In the 1934 World Cup, they made it to the 3rd place playoff, losing the game. But in 1954, they returned and they managed to finish 3rd in that tournament. So it shows that around that era, they had some good players. It was a pretty solid team. But for some reason, Austria always have some great players. And right now, their team is also pretty decent, with David Alaba obviously being the standout player right now. But one thing is certain, Austria will not be able to improve their personal best at the World Cup this year, because simply they're not even going to the tournament. They didn't even qualify, and even if they did qualify, I don't think they would have made it all the way to the 3rd place playoff. So yeah, unfortunate for them, right now things aren't going that great, but definitely in history they had some good tournaments, so that's fine. But let's move on to the next nation. In 6th spot we have one nation, so no double nations here, and I have to be honest, this one surprised me a lot, because when thinking of Poland, I don't really hold them in high regard in terms of football. Sure, they have some great players, they had some great players in the past as well. Of course, right now their standout player is Lewandowski, but right now that's about it. Their team isn't that great, in my opinion, apart from Lewandowski. But since the first World Cup, they managed to finish in 3rd spot twice, which again, I was pretty surprised about. This also makes them the country with the most 3rd place finishes without ever winning the tournament. During the 70s and the 80s, these guys apparently had a great team, because both in 1974 and in 1982, they lost the semi-finals, but went on to win their playoff game. Those two tournaments marked their only top 4 finishes. Contrary to Austria, they actually are in the tournament this year. They're in a group with Mexico, Saudi Arabia and Argentina. In this group, it's pretty obvious who will take top spot and last spot. But I don't know, I think it could be very interesting to see Mexico versus Poland for that 2nd spot. But then again, I personally don't think that they will improve on their personal best, as I don't really see them go all the way to the semi-finals. I just really don't see that happening. And right now, things are getting interesting, because now we have 5 nations that all made it to the finals, but never actually won the tournament. In 5th, we have the first of those 5 nations, and that country is Croatia. Not only did they make it to the final once, they also managed to get one 3rd place finish as well. We all know when they made it to the final in that amazing tournament for them in 2018. I'm pretty sure that England fans didn't really enjoy that game against Croatia, but for Croatia, this was absolutely a great tournament. They topped their group ahead of Argentina, and after that they knocked out Denmark, Russia, England, but in the final they played against France, losing that game 4-2. But definitely a great tournament for them. Unfortunately, they didn't win it. The Golden Ball, however, was won by Luka Modric for that tournament, and later on he also won the actual Ballon d'Or after winning basically everything with Real Madrid, and then also getting his country to the World Cup final. But this wasn't their only successful tournament, because they made it to the semi-finals another time, because at the tournament in France in 1998 they lost in the final, but then eventually won the 3rd place playoff against the Netherlands. I'm not gonna lie, I definitely would have loved to see a different result there, but yeah, what can you do? But it hasn't always been plain sailing for Croatia. They didn't always make it out of the group stage, and they also crashed out of the knockout rounds 3 other times, and of course the tournaments we talked about before. So let's move on to another nation that made it to the finals, didn't win it, but also finished in 3rd place twice. And again, a surprise for me, because Sweden is in this spot. The country has enjoyed 4 top 4 finishes to date, which is actually pretty decent. They lost their only final in 1958. They lost that final against Brazil, and that definitely isn't a disgrace, because back then the country took their maiden World Cup title as they won 5-2 against Sweden. Before that, they already finished 3rd in 1950, and they did the same thing in 1994. They also made the semi-finals in 1938, but eventually didn't win the playoff game. So yeah, fairly surprising. Again, in the 50s, they probably had a great team, not that I really know that much about that. Then it took them a long time, till 1994, to actually go to the 3rd place again. But unfortunately for Sweden, they will not be at the tournament this year, just like Austria. So unfortunately, Zlatan and his teammates will be watching the tournament from the comfort of their own home. And now it's time to move on to top 3. But there actually isn't really a 3rd spot, because in 2nd there are 2 nations that achieved the same thing. Those nations, also again very surprising, Hungary and Czech Republic. Because the Czech Republic, formerly known as Czechoslovakia, were runners-up twice, because as Czechoslovakia they played in the 1934 and 1962 final, but unfortunately they had to deal with some big nations, losing against the likes of Italy and Brazil. So where Czechoslovakia was pretty successful, it hasn't really been the same for the Czech Republic, because since the dissolution of Czechoslovakia they didn't make it to the final, which definitely isn't a shame, but they also went out in the group stage as their only World Cup appearance as the Czech Republic. The other nation that reached the final twice was Hungary. Again, a very surprising feature here. They reached the final in 1938, losing against Italy, and some years later in 1954 they lost against West Germany in Switzerland. It's now time to talk about top spot. You guys had the time to think about it, but it's pretty obvious, because the Netherlands are the most successful nation not to win the World Cup ever in our existence. Because we were runners-up a whopping 3 times and also finished in 3rd spot once. We reached our first final in 1974, introducing the Dutch total football, which definitely earned a lot of sympathy from all the other nations because it was attacking football, it was attractive to watch, there were some unbelievable players that played there of course. But eventually at the last hurdle we lost against West Germany, but the World Cup after that immediately we made it to the final again, but this time we lost against Argentina. But then for a long time we didn't make it that far until the 2010 World Cup in South Africa. Again, a great team with the likes of Rafael van der Vaart, Wesley Sneijder, Arjen Robben, Robin van Persie, Klaas-Jan Huntelaar, you name it, where eventually we played against Spain, and I have to be honest, that country was just absolutely insane. They just were the best country in the world and they definitely deserved to win that tournament. But we had some chances in the game, obviously the famous chance from Arjen Robben, where Iker Casillas saved that with his toe. The game went to extra time, but in the 116th minute, Andres Iniesta scored the winning goal for Spain. The World Cup after that, the 2014 World Cup in Brazil, nobody expected anything from the Netherlands. We made it to the semi-finals, losing out to Argentina, and in our 3rd place playoff, we won 3-0 against host nation Brazil. That was pretty embarrassing for them, after already losing their semi-final game 7-1 against Germany. So pretty horrible tournament for them, somewhat decent for us, but of course I would have loved to see one of these results go a little bit differently, because unfortunately we're the most successful nation without a World Cup trophy. And you know what, I don't really see that changing this tournament. Something crazy would happen, but nothing is impossible, we should always hope. So guys, that's the video done. Let me know in the comments down below, who do you think will win the World Cup this year? It's getting closer and closer, only 3 weeks until the tournament kicks off. As always, be sure to like the video, subscribe if you're new to the channel, click my videos on the end screen right now, and I'll see you on the next video. Peace!